Hey, welcome to my latest tying tutorial. This is Matt Zudweg, and my latest fly here is the Scullyweg. We're going to start off with an Ahrex SA220 size 2 streamer hook. This is a saltwater hook, and we're going to use Vivus 100 denier thread. So let's start by getting our thread wrapped on the hook, and we're going to go pretty close to the bend of the hook here. Clip that off, and we're going to start with the Spawn Pollywog tails. This one's going to be in white. White's definitely my preferred bass color here. So we're going to get that lashed on good. Really lock it in place here. And now the next step is we're going to add the Greg Senyo chromatic brush here. This is the 1.5 inch version. And this particular color is called Live Bait. So we're going to give our thread a spin just so we tighten everything up, and then lash that brush down nice and good. I'm going to go right back to where I tied in that pollywog tail. Now we're going to add a little bit of ice dub. Now pearl or minnow belly, any of those nice white sparkly colors are really good on this particular fly. For the bass version anyways. Also, another good color to add here is hot pink. It's going to add a really nice translucent look to it, especially if you add a different color here like the hot pink, or you could experiment with lots of different colors on that part of it. The next step we're going to do here is we're going to add just a little bit of weight, and all I'm doing is adding some large bead chain eyes. These are silver. We're going to add these underneath the hook. So I'm going to flip this upside down here. And we're going to get those lashed in really well. So we're going to do a dozen or so X-wraps on each direction. And then once we get the X-wraps done, we're going to go around the whole base of it to really tighten everything in good. You can see I'm really pulling on that thread hard here. That's where the Vivus 100 denier comes in really handy. We'll get her flipped back over. And now we're going to start palmering that brush through, making sure we stroke those fibers back every turn. These chromatic brushes are the best. I love them so much. We'll get that all the way up to the back of the eyes, and then we'll just give that a good thread wrap to tie it off here. Couple wraps in front to lock it in good, and then clip that off. Now you'll see I'm going to go right in front of the eyes just to get that thread out of the way. I'm going to take my nylon brush and really rough up that brush. Get all those fibers sticking out. Make them really fishy. All right, next thing we're going to add here is some grizzly flutter legs. These flutter legs are silicone, they're super lively, and I'm just going to add like 3 of them here. So I'm going to clip about 3 or 4 off. And this is a trick you'll see me do a lot if I have a fly that has some bead chain eyes or lead eyes. I'm going to go underneath the hook and then just fold them back over the top of the eyes and give it a couple ties around there. And that's going to hold those on top of the fly really well, and it's a really simple way to add things like rubber legs or flash. Here's my next step. We're going to add some pearl flashabou. Another good color option on this particular fly is the UV crystal flash. They're both super good for bass. So we're going to do the same thing we did with the rubber legs. Add those under the hook eye and then around over top of the eyes. Give that a clip so it's just a little bit longer than the legs themselves. I'll rotate this around and kind of give you a look at where we are so far from the top here. All right, I'm just going to give that thread a spin again. I'm going to go back around that eye once just to make sure we're right in front of it. The next step is we're going to take some deer belly hair in white You can just use a Primo patch as well, but it's hard to get a Primo patch in white, and I want white for this fly. So we're going to grab a hunk of hair here. If we're going by the pencil method, I'd say we're probably 1/2 to 3/4 the diameter of a pencil. And we're just going to make a collar on this fly. All we're using this for is just the collar. So we'll get rid of some of that under fur. And then kind of measure out the length that you want. It's not going to be a real big collar. Kind of think the pectoral fins on a sculpin. That's about the length you want. So we'll trim that off nice and neat in front. It's a good idea to give your thread a spin here so that the thread is going to push back against your fingers. Couple lashes and then tighten it all up. And then we'll wind that through a few times just to make sure all those fibers are locked in good. Now you can kind of squish it back with your thumb, make sure everything's looking good there. All right, next we're grabbing a mallard flank and we're pulling some of those fibers back. We're only going to take a few turns with this, so we don't need much of it. So we're just going to get the tip, stroke some of those fibers back just to get yourself a nice tie-in point. Clip that, and we're just going to face this cup down towards the fly. Give it a few lashes to make sure it's tied in well. Now we're going to wind this around just a couple times here. Sometimes mallard flanks like to fight you a little bit, but just fold those fibers back. In the end, it's not going to matter. We're just kind of trying to imitate the pectoral fins here on a sculpin that have the really mottled look like a nice mallard flank. All right, get those lashed all in good. And you'll see here, I'm going to clip that stem off nice and close. And then I'm going to give my thread a good spin here just to tighten up all those thread fibers and go back over top of that mallard flank a little bit. Tighten it all up real nice. Now the final step I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab some more of my ice dub. This is the pearl again, and I'm just going to break all of that up, get it into kind of a short section here. I'm breaking it in half at this point, just to get a nice short section of it. And we are going to lash this in right on top of the hook. Kind of split the difference here. Give your thread a spin just to tighten the fibers. A couple lashes around is all you need. 3 at the most. Pull those back. And then we will kind of flatten everything out here and give it a couple wraps in front. And the last thing we're going to do is throw a couple whip finishes on, and this is the completed fly. So for bass, I would typically fish this on an intermediate line or add a poly leader to my floating line. And from a steelhead standpoint, this would be fished as a swung fly with a switch or a spey rod. The other thing to note would be if you are tying this in a steelhead version, tie it on a shank or a cotter pin with the hook hanging off the back for those typical ankle biting steelhead. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, I hope that you'll like, subscribe, and throw a comment on my channel. Tell me what you'd like to see. Thank you so much for watching.